Our first speaker is Dr. Frank Knoefel. He is a physician at Bruyère Memory Program, also holds the chair of primary healthcare dementia research at Bruyère Research Institute. He's also a scientist at HWell National Center of Excellence Network and professor at both the University of Ottawa and Carleton University. Dr. Knoefel will talk about how using computers can help with diagnosing and monitoring cognitive decline and the impacts of aging and cognitive decline on driving. So without further ado, I will turn over to Dr. Knoefel.
Thank you, Herman. Thank you for that kind introduction, and good evening, everyone. And so I will see, yes, I have control of the slides, so that's a good thing. So the research we do at the Bruyère Research Institute here, and we're going to highlight some of it this evening, but essentially it can be divided sort of into two main categories. The first is what I would call technology and aging, and the second is research in drugs and therapeutic trials. And so I'm going to start us off by talking about some of the technology and aging research. And that technology and aging research can be further divided into what I would call smart home research, so technology that can be embedded into the home, and research on driving. So we'll start off with, yeah. So the first thing is we're going to talk a little bit about the AgeWell National Innovation Hub, SAM3, and because we owe a lot of gratitude and funding to AgeWell. So AgeWell is a national centers of excellence, and we've been participating with them since before 2015. The first grant, though, came in at 2015 for 35 million, and this is for the whole country. And there was another 22 million added in 2021, as you can see. We were involved in the initial application, and as you can see, myself here and Dr. Bruyère were the first two principal investigators, and a lot of other people have joined, including Dr. Thomas and Dr. Sveistrup and others. So AgeWell is concerned about supportive homes and cognition and mobility, and those are the domains that we're most part of. So I want to talk about the first set of projects that we started, and this was actually in partnership with the Dementia Society. We actually went to the Dementia Society and we asked, this was about 6-7 years ago now, we asked, what is one of the biggest concerns you have right now in caring for people with dementia here in Ottawa? And the person we talked to said, look, my husband suffers from dementia, and at night sometimes he'll get up to go to the bathroom, and that worries me because I don't know if he's going to find his way back to the bedroom, and especially in winter I don't know if he's going to head outside. So I'm wide awake all night waiting for him to come back to bed, and so can you design some technology around that? And the kinds of questions you need to ask when you're sort of designing a system for nighttime monitoring are, do you want a wearable device, which is something that then you have to put on, but then when it's on, it's very precise and tracking the person? Or do you want an ambient device, so something embedded into the home? And we decided that we didn't want to rely on the person necessarily remembering to put something on or having to put something on that the person couldn't remove. So we went with the ambient sensors, the sensors that are embedded in the home. And we went that there was already sensors that people have in the home, and that's a security system, right? So you can get sensors as part of a security system that looks for motion when you're away from home. Now you can also, of course, teach the system some new tricks, and that is to detect motion at night. And where is the person with the dementia? There are issues then that you need to do research on, which is where does the data go? and how do you store the data and how do you use the data. And of course, there are real issues with how will the person living with dementia, as well as the care partners, accept new technology? Can you do it in the home? So we did that. And so here are the bits and pieces that we installed in people's homes. So this is a Sonos speaker. This is the sensors that were actually attached in the home. So you'd have motion sensors like this one here that would potentially be in a bathroom, this one that could be in a bedroom, this one would be in the hallway, and then a smart light or a light connected to a smart plug. And so you need a hub which connects to the internet, and then you install the bits and pieces. So a sensor on the door, a sensor under the bed, then you have the inside hub connecting to the internet. So essentially we were able to detect the person getting out of bed. There would be a door sensor to say, did they leave the room or which room did they go into? And then a speaker that could be used to tell the person living with dementia to go, please go back to bed because it's the middle of the night. So that kind of system we also installed into a retirement home, because it's one thing to be able to monitor people at home. It's a whole other kind of exercise to monitor people in a communal setting. So we partnered with a company called Esprit AI, who had a very similar set of sensors. So a motion sensor, a door sensor, and you see here, they're pretty small compared to a Toonie. And so Richmond Care Home in Richmond has 14 beds, and they have a complete female resident complement, and they all live with dementia. And so we wanted to test the technology that works very well in individual people's homes. We wanted to see how can you use that in a retirement home setting. And particularly, we were wondering about wandering patterns, time in bed, resting time. Can you monitor these, and what can you do with that information? So we ended up having in this group 7 higher functioning and 5 lower functioning ladies. Whoops, you got magic. It's appearing and disappearing by itself. Okay, and we had 407 nights of data, because the technology does all the data collection. Now once it's installed, it just runs and collects data. So we looked at rest time in the lower functioning and the higher functioning, and you see that's quite similar. And you can see that though that the in-room movements were very different. So the higher functioning group got out more times out of bed than the lower functioning group. And the time that they spent out of bed was higher as well. So you can see there's different patterns of behavior in the lower and higher functioning group. So that's just proving that that kind of technology can do that kind of monitoring. And of course, with the idea that you can improve sleep quality and adjust medication and that kind of thing, and then be able to see, have we made the right impact? So we also took this set of sensors into a hospital setting. So Greystone is a facility, it's a transitional care unit. It's actually the largest in Ontario. It has 120 beds, just over 120 beds. And it's a complicated partnership between Bruyère Continuing Care, Bayshore Health, and Greystone Village. And so what we wanted to do here is we wanted to see what is the best way of implementing technology. So it's one thing to have it technology that works. It's another thing to test it in people's homes. It's another thing to test it in an environment that's complex, like a hospital environment. So we had physicians, engineers, industrial designers that were looking at care processes, and then even business people that were interested in, can you cost effectively implement this kind of thing? And so it's a complex environment, it's in a complex process. So we had to have a large steering committee and a smaller implementation committee. And we did nighttime workflow mapping. So we actually had a student who spent a number of nights in the retirement, well, in the hospital setting, in the Greystone facility, tracking what the staff did at night. Then we had to select the technology and figure out what we wanted to do with it. And we've been asking the staff for feedback on how all this works. So that's some of the smart home technology, and Dr. Thomas is going to talk more about that shortly. But I also wanted to talk about driving simulation. And the first thing is, why are we even worried about driving simulation? The first, of course, is that driving is very important in Canada, and we need our driver's license to be independent, and we need our independence to stay physically healthy, to be able to go out to a gym and to go to a walk in the forest and that kind of thing, to meet with people, so to be socially engaged. And all of these things, of course, are good for our overall well-being. So unfortunately, though, as we age, and in particular as people have increasing cognitive impairment, driving becomes a greater risk. So right now, the way we assess driving risk is through a history and a physical, and we use paper and pencil tools. And here I've got two of the types of tests that are really important for understanding how a person's brain works. So here's someone who's drawing a clock, and you can see they had a little bit of difficulty distributing the numbers, and they went to 13. The 12 is not on top. So there's a number of mistakes here. And of course, the hands don't really, we can't really tell what time it is with these hands because it sort of runs through a whole bunch of numbers. So the clock drawing gives us an idea of how the brain is working. The other test here is the Trails B, and how it works is you connect a number to a letter. So 1A, 2, then B, then 3, then C, and so on. And so we do these, and we make a determination about safety to drive. And that's a very difficult conversation to have with patients and family members. And in particular, they have difficulty sort of translating the difficulty in these tests with a difficulty to drive. And so that's one of the main reasons we've invested in a driving simulator. The other issues are that on-road driving tests are actually expensive. They cost around $800 to do. And the good news about a driving simulator is, if you do have a crash, no one gets hurt, right? There's no injuries to anyone, and then you can have the driving experience in a safe environment. And it is actually easier to do research on driving simulators because, of course, you'd have to be in the car with everyone driving and writing notes, and then your notes aren't that precise. And, if you don't look to the speedometer at the right time, you might not catch the right speed. Whereas a driving simulator, it collects all of this data continuously. So it allows you in an easier way to monitor all the variables of driving. And so before we go and show you the driving simulator that we have, I just wanted to highlight how difficult this whole conversation about the driving assessment is. So what we actually did, we did a small research project where we asked family members of people living with dementia who had lost their license between 18 months and 3 years before the time of the research. And we asked them to tell us about, how their experience was going to an appointment, having a memory assessment, and seeing the physician, and then being told that, driving was a risk. And so I just took two little quotes, but it gives you an idea of the importance of driving and the emotional content associated with it. So this is a daughter talking about her mom, and she said, well, she was frustrated and quite upset because she didn't see any reason for it. She did not see the risk that she was taking. So here's a daughter who, who saw that her mother wasn't able to understand her challenges, And even though she failed on certain paper tests, that just didn't resonate with her. And here's the second one. This is a wife after the experience of her husband finding out that he couldn't drive anymore. But she's talking about her own lived experience. So she said, it was a shock for me. We weren't prepared. I was shocked by that decision right then and there. I didn't see it coming. And then I had to deal with his feelings. I couldn't see what our future was going to be. I was just trying to take care of him, and he was so angry. And I couldn't see the next week in the calendar. I was just living in that moment, and the moment was awful. So this is why driving research is so important, because it's such an emotional field and so important for people. So this is the machine that we have been able to get through a grant. And this is actually our machine. And this is one of our researchers driving. And so you can see that actually the cabin is taken out of a Cobalt, a Pontiac Cobalt. So it's an actual steering wheel, and the seat and everything, the gear shift, everything is exactly like it would be in a car, except that, of course, there's 3 computer screens replacing the outside environment, but there's a little mirror, and there's even a place to shoulder check. And so you can see how you can fade out different screens, so you can set up the environment for the person driving in many different ways. So our first project that we're going to be starting very soon is getting normative data. Normative data means we need to find out how people react to this machine that are healthy. And we want it at all kinds of different ages. So if it's difficult to keep the car in the middle of the road for everyone, then we wouldn't consider that, to be particularly a sign of abnormality. But if healthy people can keep the car in the center of the lane, and then people with cognitive impairment seem to drift more, well, then that gives us something to measure in future research. So we need to get that baseline data first. The second project that we're going to be starting, oh, sorry about that, that should be a D, of course, second project, is in partnership with the Heart Institute. So the question we're going to be looking at is, what is the impact of chronic arrhythmia on cognition and driving ability? So we're going to be looking at 20 adults with chronic heart disease and partner controls, and we'll be doing cognitive testing to see how they score on paper tests. And then, of course, we'll do the driving simulator, which will include a driving component and testing component.